Let's have a sesh on stakeholder mapping. So when we think about stakeholders, we're thinking about anyone with an interest in the business. Now these stakeholders can be internal or external. Internal means inside the business. External means they are outside the business. Examples of internal stakeholders would be owners, management, employees, and also shareholders. Now, external stakeholders could be customers, suppliers, or the government, or the local community. Now, the key thing with stakeholder mapping is that you have managers, and managers will try and make decisions. It might be they try and make change. And if they try and make decisions or change, then they will need to manage relationships. But they will not manage relationships the same. They will manage each stakeholder's relationship differently, depending on power or influence and interest. So we'll get to that in a minute. So when we're talking about manage relationships differently, we're talking in terms of attention given to them and communication given to them. And that is how they will manage the relationships with their stakeholders. Now, stakeholder mapping can be broken down as so, into one of these four quadrants here. So it could be that each stakeholder has high power or influence, or low power or influence, or they have interest. They either have a low interest in the decision or high interest in the decision. Let's go through each of the four quadrants. So if you have a decision and the stakeholder has high interest in that, but also this particular stakeholder has strong power. Probably the strongest power is likely to be, if they are a private or a public limited company, the shareholders. Now the shareholders in this example could be the key players, which is what they're defined as. They are the key players. You need as managers to put the most effort into them. You need to manage these key players, and if it's a shareholder, you need to manage them closely. Because if you can put a smile on their face, it will be vital to the business's success. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you could have not high power, but instead low power, and also a particular stakeholder that has low interest in the decision that managers are making. So clearly here, managers should put minimal effort into these particular stakeholders. Put the least effort, to be precise, but you should still monitor them. You should still monitor them because it could be that if you don't monitor them and it's some form of change that you have made as a manager, in the words of Dr. John Cotter, they might get up to some mischief. Now, on the other ends of the scale, we have high power and low interest. And if you make a decision as a manager and you have recognised that the stakeholder has high power but they're not really interested in it, you just want to keep them satisfied. As long as the decision that you are making or the change that you are making has no real impact on them, they're not going to be resistant to it, so therefore you just try and keep them satisfied. And the last of the quadrants is the fact if they do not have high power but they have low power or low influence, but they are very interested, so they have high interest, well, certainly you want to keep them informed. Keep them informed, perhaps you want to consult them, but because they have low power, if you're thinking about the Taliban-Schmidt continuum, then you might want to go more to the tell side. If you're thinking about your management style when you're managing the relationship with this particular stakeholder, it might be more authoritarian or more paternalistic. Definite loop-ins that you could put there. Now, the last thing to add on to this is whether the business is taking on a shareholder approach or a stakeholder approach. If they're taking on a shareholder approach, that would suggest that managers are solely interested in keeping the shareholders happy. And you keep shareholders happy likely by high profits and therefore dividends, divvies to the shareholders. But also there is the stakeholder approach and the fact that managers are not solely about keeping the shareholders happy, but just about keeping beyond the shareholders happy, keeping all stakeholders happy. Now, it depends on which angle of the approaches that the managers and the business have decided to take. For some recent application on that, Jamie Dimon led a board, and I put the link in below, where they had redefined in the US the definition of a corporation away from the shareholder approach towards the stakeholder approach. See the description box for more details. Other than that, I'll see you at the next session.